Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Pitch Blue by Connolly Woods once again, and this time we are running up against Abzan. So this is our opening hand. It's kind of got most of the things that we want. It's got some early interaction. It's got 3 lands. It's got Narset and Notion Thief, so relatively happy with this opening hand. Leads with a Shambling Vent. I play out the border post here. I think in hindsight that was probably a bad idea. We could have and probably should have kept a Spell Snare as our opponent plays a Tarmogoyf, which currently is a 0-1, but we could have just answered that for the sake of putting this border post into play, which you didn't actually necessarily need to do. So I think that was a mistake. Opponent tries to Inquisition us. We're going to Spell Pierce that to protect our hand, but that does pump up the Tarmogoyf to a 2/3. Opponent plays an Overgrown Tomb tapped, so no further plays out of them, fortunately. Another border post, so getting a lot of land here. I'm going to play up Narset. I'm going to -2 it. It's a bit of a risk because our opponent can potentially grow their Goyf or play another land and then activate Shambling Vent to kill Narset, but I think that's kind of a risk anyway, and I'd like to draw a card here or get some value out of Narset if it is going to end up dead. Also, there's the possibility that we can draw into Snapback or something similar, which would give us an answer. So we draw it and Substantiate. Could have taken the Remand, but I think we prefer the Bounce here because we're going to have to deal with our opponent's existing board presence. Time goes down to 1 loyalty after being attacked by Tarmogoyf. Opponent doesn't have the 3rd land to activate Shambling Vent, but they do follow up with a Dark Confidant, which is a big problem for us. Basically, our whole deck is based around preventing our opponent from drawing cards. And Dark Confidant technically doesn't draw a card. It reveals a card off the top of the library and then puts it into hand. So as it's not worded as a draw a card, Notion Thief and Narset can't interfere with it. So Confidant is kind of, well, it's a fairly big disruption to what we're trying to do here. So I'm just going to play out a Watery Grave and pass the turn. We've got some options here. We can potentially run out Notion Thief. We can Vendilion Click and steal a card from our opponent's hand after the draw step. Or we can bounce one of their cards. Opponent sends both the guys at Narset. Just going to let that happen. And pass the turn. Opponent's going to Inquisition us. We could have Vendilion clicked in response, I suppose. This is the best play we could have made. But we're just going to let that happen. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. Narset goes into the graveyard, which further pumps the Goyf, unfortunately. Get to cast Notion Thief here. We draw Sanitarium, which is nice. That's sort of part of the lock. But we do need to find an answer to this Dark Confidant still. And there is the possibility that our opponent's going to be able to use removal on this Notion Thief. But for now, we're going to get in for 3. I think it's worth getting in here just because we want to reduce our opponent's life total as much as possible with this Dark Confidant in play. And hope that we can get there. Opponent has the Fatal Push, so after cracking the Fetch, they're going to Fatal Push the Notion Thief. Vendilion Click in response, so we can take one of their cards away from their hand and also draw a card ourselves. Thanks to Notion Thief. Opponent has Siege Rhino Scavenge Ooze in hand. We're going to take the Siege Rhino because that's the more problematic card here. So that goes for good, and we get to draw a Snapback. So here I'm going to use Snapback to get back our Notion Thief or bounce it back to hand. So we managed to keep that keep that around for now. And yeah, we know our opponent's hand is just Scavenge Ooze for now, but they will be drawing 2 cards on their turn. They draw Assassin's Trophy, which obviously is significant as a way of removing pretty much any permanent they want. And they're going to bring some pressure, attacking us for 6. That's 10. Draw Lawbroker, which is a further puzzle piece to our combo. Decide to play it out here. So maybe we should have just kept up mana for Notion Thief because we need to keep the Spell Snare up so we don't get Assassin's Trophied. Attack for 3 in the air, again trying to whittle down our opponent's life total as much as we can. Opponent attacks for 4, just going to take it here, go down to 6, another border post. I'm playing this out, I don't know if it's even particularly necessary, but I suppose the more mana we have, the more ways we can interact with our opponent. Decide to stay back because we are potentially facing a lethal attack next turn. Draws a card. Play Notion Thief on upkeep, but there's no particularly good reason to do that. They draw Liliana, which picks them down to 8. Plays Tarmogoyf. I'm not going to Spell Snare that because we're leaving Spell Snare up for Assassin's Trophy, which is going to be the more problematic card. Just going to block Tarmogoyf here and then activate the Lawbroker, which allows us to draw 2 cards and forces our opponent to discard. We draw into Days Undoing, which could be interesting here. It can draw us a lot of cards and potentially answers. And follows up with Liliana and -2's Liliana, forcing us to sack the click here. We draw Miko Koro, Center of the Sea, which is going to run out as well. And then we are going to Days Undoing, knowing that our opponent's last card is Assassin's Trophy. So I'm going to have to discard down here, see where we get to. I think I make a mistake here in my discarding. So yeah, I end up discarding Unsubstantiate, which seems like a big mistake really. Because essentially what we're going to try and do here is bounce a load of cards back to our opponent's hand to stay alive. So our opponent attacks, we're going to drop Vendilion Click, take a look at our opponent's hand. They've got Tireless Tracker and a Blooming Marsh. So we'll take the Tireless Tracker, gets to draw us another card. We found another Days Undoing. So yeah, if we had that Unsubstantiate, we'd actually be in a pretty good position here. I kind of punted this game, I think, for the most part, unfortunately. So yeah, we could have then bounced Tarmogoyf and then bounced the other Tarmogoyf, and then we, well actually yeah, we could have bounced 3 of their creatures, which would have been pretty good. And then I suppose I've still got Shambling Vent to protect them from just being attacked to death the following turn, but I think we're in a pretty good position there. From there, we can run out some creatures and then we can Days Undoing again if we feel like it, which would draw us another 14 cards and put us in pretty solid position. I guess they would have to sort of run out some of their creatures again as well. So yeah, not keeping the Unsubstantiate is a pretty bad play. I think there's probably a number of places where I could have played slightly differently, which would have ended up swinging this more in my favour. But yeah, unfortunately, those are the breaks. So we're going to block the Tarmogoyfs. Going to bounce one of their dudes. They go down to 5. They play Scavenging Ooze. And I discard Commandeer to Liliana's +1. So, yeah, we're in pretty bad shape here. I think I end up conceding from here. I suppose we can Notion Feast and to Days Undoing and just see what happens. Guess that's the best play that was available to us. Yeah, I think I end up conceding because I can't see a way around it. I suppose, yeah, even if we manage to somehow deal with all their board, they still have Shambling Vent, which they can just activate and attack us for 2, so I didn't see a way out. I guess I probably should have just played that out to see what happens, but yeah, I can't see a way of us really winning from here. But yeah, certainly a lot of different lines, a lot of different ways we could have played this game, which probably would have changed the result. I think that we did certainly make some mistakes, particularly discarding of Substantiate was a particularly bad one. We also could have, I think we had an opportunity earlier in the game to deal with the Dark Confidant. We could have just blocked it with a Mendelian Click or something along those lines. I think that was the case. So yeah, I mean, certainly Dark Confidant is a card that we need to look out for because it is so problematic to what we're trying to achieve. Manlands are kind of a problem in general because there's not a lot we can do about them, so they're just going to have to stick around. So we kind of have to answer them eventually, usually, or just hope that they never matter. Planeswalker is also a bit of a problem with our current setup because we don't really have ways to deal with permanents that aren't creatures for the most part, other than to just counter them before they enter the battlefield. So that's kind of where we are. So it was kind of a tight game. I think it was probably closer than it looked, but yeah, and eventually we got worn down. So here we are with the sideboard. And so in terms of cards we want and we don't want, Spell Snare seems pretty good. A lot of their cards are 2 mana, a lot of the important ones, so Dark Confidant, Tarmogoyf, etc. are in that slot, so Spell Snare is a nice cheap answer to those. Commandeer doesn't seem like it does enough in this matchup. I guess potentially we could steal Liliana, I think was one of the things that I was thinking of, so I might have kept some of those in. Obviously stealing a Planeswalker would be pretty nice. But yeah, other than that, it's not all that great. I guess we can steal removal spells as well, potentially, but it's a big cost to play for not a whole lot of value, so I don't love that. In terms of other cards, I think Blast Zone, again, seems like a good card to come in, sort of on the same principles as Spell Snare, in that they've got a lot of sort of 2 CMC and maybe even 3 CMC cards that we might want to blow up, and Blast Zone's a fairly good answer to those. Damnation, I think, probably wants to come in as well as a way of just wiping the board of their large creatures. Engulf the Shore probably isn't quite so good, given that their creatures can end up pretty powerful, but maybe we still want some of those. Ashiok could come in as a way of shrinking Tarmogoyf, but I just don't think it does enough on its own to warrant that. Unwed Ego, not really. Tyrant Scorn, it seems good. It's an answer to Dark Confidant, and it's a bounce spell if we ever find that we don't want to be killing our creature for whatever reason. And then potentially we want relics, I guess. The same sort of zone as Ashiok, that they're good ways of shrinking Geist, but I don't know if that's necessarily where we want to be, but I suppose at the very least it cantrips. So those are potential cards I want to bring in. I don't really like Spell Pierce in this matchup. I think the creatures are sort of the main concern from their side, so I think we probably want to cut Spell Pierce. After that, not easy. I'd maybe cut down on the Commandeers. I think, yeah, I'd probably cut the Commandeers as well. That leaves about 5 spaces for us. And then we can bring in Blast Zones, Spell Snares, Damnation, and Tyrant Scorn. I think that seems good. Might be able to make some space for relics as well if we want to. Maybe cut on disrupting shoal, potentially. But yeah, let's see how we go on. Okay, so this is our opening hand for game 2. It's not terribly good, to be honest. We have got Remand to slow them down. We've got Lawbroker, which is an important part of our combo, and also can dig us deeper just in general, although we do have to worry about accidentally looting for our opponent. So I end up keeping this, but I think in hindsight I might have mulliganed this hand. Days Undoing doesn't do a whole lot unless we're going to find Narset. Put Inquisitions, takes Remand. We draw another Remand, so we're just going to pass the turn here. Tamworth tries to come down, we're going to hit that with a Remand. We draw Spell Snare on our turn, after drawing another Lawbroker. Fortunately no third land as of yet. Spell Snare is going to counter the Tarmogoyf. Opponent passes the turn, we find our third land. Just going to run out Lawbroker here because we don't have much else going on. Opponent has a Fatal Push to answer that. Another Tarmogoyf comes down as a 4/5. Get our fourth land, play another Lawbroker. What was that? So that was Collective Brutality, taking a Days Undoing and killing our Lawbroker. Then the opponent gets attacked for 4. We draw Narset here. So we've got some options here. I suppose we can just blindly Days Undoing, which has the advantages of shrinking Goyf and obviously just giving us a whole new hand. Or we can just run out Narset and see if we can keep Narset protected. If we minus it and find a bounce spell, then we might be able to keep Narset around. So we do just that. We managed to find a Vapor Snag in our top 4 cards. So we can still activate Shambling Vent if they want, but they're going to just attack with Narset. I'm going to Vapor Snag, keep Narset alive, hopefully. Opponent drops a Siege Rhino, so that's going to drain us down to 10. And does need an answer relatively soon. Engulf the Shore is fairly far off from dealing with that currently, unfortunately. Minus Narset because we might as well, I think. We're drawing another Narset, which is nice. I suppose we just Days Undoing here. The reason I minus Narset is not really to look for Narset, but to look for another bounce spell, because if we bounce Siege Rhino back into our opponent's hand and then Days Undoing, then they lose the Rhino. So we're going to Days Undoing. Opponent's down to 2 cards on their turn, and we've got a full grip now. Unfortunately not really what we were looking for, but we'll see how we get on. Opponent activates Shambling Vent. Shambling Vent kills Narset, and Siege Rhino puts us down to 6. So we're in a little bit of trouble here, and Engulf is still a bit of a way off dealing with anything. We draw Notion Thief, which could be nice, but we are going to have to do something about our opponent attacking us this turn. Interestingly, they don't activate Shambling Vent. They Collective Brutality just to discard a card out of a hand, and they end up just taking Engulf, which we have another copy of. Okay, they do have another land to activate Shambling Vent. Yeah, but they decide against it, which is interesting, because that just gives us more time than we deserve, to be quite honest. I guess they were worried about us just casting Vendilion Click and killing the Shambling Vent, which I suppose is fairly good, because we are only 1 land away from bouncing Siege Rhino back to hand. So I suppose that does actually make sense. So end of turn, we're going to cast Notion Thief, which is nice and safe. Draw Commit to Memory, which is fairly good here. So this is a way that we can answer the Siege Rhino and put it back into our opponent's deck. And then we also have the ability either through Vendilion Click or the Sanitarium to then force them to discard it, so we'll know when they're about to draw it and then we can get rid of it. Obviously if they cast Siege Rhino we're dead, so that is a concern. So I'm going to play Polluted Delta, so we have the ability to engulf the Siege Rhino if that becomes necessary. Opponent draws for their turn, attacks with Siege Rhino. They don't activate the Shambling Vent, so I'm just going to be able to commit that. Opponent's last card they drew was a Blooming Marsh, fortunately, so nothing to be too concerned about. We're on to a Spell Snare. So we could cast Memory and draw 14 cards, which this is certainly an option for us here. But I think we're better off staying back for now. But draws a Dark Confidant. Again, I didn't Vendilion Click here. I mean, I suppose we could have Sanitariumed instead. But I quite like... I mean, I suppose, yeah, I mean, I guess the reason I didn't do that is that we've got the risk that our opponent's just going to attack with Shambling Vent. So we kind of need the Vendilion Click up for that eventuality, because we don't really want to see this Notion Thief die, because it's our sort of main source of action at this point. So Vendilion Click's not going to get the value that we would have wanted out of it, but still puts us in a fairly good position. We're going to get to attack for 3 here, and we drew another Vendilion Click, so we can actually use Vendilion Click to get rid of the Siege Rhino as we initially intended. Although Sanitarium would have done the same job. Just for notes, but this way I get to put some extra power on the board. Put another counter on the Blast Zone, so we're ready to kill off any 2-drops that our opponent might have the ability to get out. Yeah, I mean, we're in pretty good position here now because we've got them fairly well locked. They don't have anything on the board that they can really do. There is the opportunity that they draw an instant spell. So they do have some outs potentially, in that they can potentially kill the Notion Thief. But every time they don't draw anything decent, then we're attacking for 6, and we also have Remand ready to go. So yeah, I think they're probably going to have a pretty rough time. We're also going to be drawing 2 cards off Sanitarium and then discarding 1. So we're just going to be gaining incrementally bigger and bigger advantage while also attacking for 6 each turn. And yeah, they decide to concede and wrap up the game from there. Okay, so here we are with game 3. This opening's not too bad. We've got early interaction and we've got Narset, so I think that's kind of what you're looking for the most part. As Inquisition on turn 1, which is going to take our Spell Snare away. Interesting they didn't take Narset there, but they've got Confidant. I'm going to Viper Snag that away. I guess I didn't necessarily need to do that there and then. Well, I think the intention was that we can then, well, we've got rid of their board presence, they're not drawing an extra card, and then we get to remand it on the way down again, which just buys us that extra time into playing Narset the following turn, so I quite like that line, I suppose. Just gives us that much more time. Draw the Notion Thief. So we can cast Narset here, or we can just unsubstantiate the Dark Confidant. I'm not entirely sure why I didn't cast Narset there. I think in hindsight I probably should have done. Really the whole idea of this line of play was to protect Narset as much as possible, but this risks our opponent having another 2-drop, or another way to just play Dark Confidant, which is what they do. So yeah, I'm not really sure what I was trying to achieve there. I think I should have just played Narset, and had we would have been able to Daze and Doing straight off the bat. Although, admittedly, our opponent would have a Dark Confidant in play. So we're still not in a bad position. We were going to play Narset, which he's going to find us a Tyrant Scorn. I suppose we could take Commit to Memory, but Tyrant Scorn actually kills Dark Confidant, which seems pretty good in this position, because Confidant is going to be a problem for us. Opponent draws an Offenser, which isn't particularly good against us, so that's fine. Tarmogoyf, and then an Assassin's Trophy on Narset. Isn't the worst because we have Notion Thief in hand, so we do have further action, but it's possible if we'd played Narset that turn earlier, we would have just been able to get away with getting the Days Undoing. And then this Tyrant Scorn could potentially just kill off that Dark Confidant. So yeah, I think that was a bit of a punt on my end. Punt draws Fatal Push, which is bad news for us. But that's Thoughtseize. I could cast Notion Thief here, but into a Fatal Push, essentially. I suppose nothing's actually gone into the graveyard, so maybe I should have just cast it and see what happens. That probably would have been a better line, I guess. One plays an Offenser, which is fine. I'm going to take up the Blast Zone to blow up these 2-drops. So we're going to kill those, and then we've got Tyrant Scorn ready to kill an Offenser if necessary, which I think we're just going to do here. Opponent plays Liliana, which isn't great, and gets back their Confidant, I think. We draw Border Post, which is not really what we're looking for. Siege Rhino comes down, puts us down to 7. And our hand's not really doing a whole lot. Just had to loot end of turn, pitching a Border Post. I don't know if we should have played Days Undoing earlier and just tried to sort of hedge our bets as to whether that would turn out well, because now we're in a really bad position, and I think maybe we should just cast this earlier. So yeah, I mean, the writing's kind of on the wall. We draw Remand, which doesn't do a whole lot. We're going to Days Undoing now, but I think probably we should have done it earlier. Does yield as an Unsubstantiate. Fulminator Mages. Gets back Fulminator Mage with Liliana. Plays another Fulminator Mage, plays Fulminator Mage again, and then takes the Sanitarium. It's kind of an interesting line, but probably good actually, because ultimately our kind of our way out of this situation is that we -3 Narset and get Days Undoing. So we draw Commit to Memory, and if we had those 2 extra lands, we could actually cast Commit, so we could deal with the Siege Rhino. Unfortunately, we're going to have to unsubstantiate it here, and our opponent just has the extra land they need to recast Siege Rhino, and that finishes us off. So yeah, unfortunately, I think some bad play from me for the most part is kind of what lost us the game. I think we probably should have played that Narset a turn earlier, and that might have been a game changer. Additionally, our opponent might have just Assassin's Trophied it, and maybe the game would have turned out exactly the same. But we weren't a million miles off. I think that's kind of the thing with the deck, is that sometimes it just comes very close to getting there and doesn't quite make it, unfortunately. And this was kind of one of those matches for the most part. But it's a lot of fun to play, for sure, and you do feel like a bit of a genius when you manage to put the lock together and bounce all their creatures and deal with all their potential threats. But yeah, didn't quite come off here, and a bit of a problematic matchup, I guess. Manlands are a pain, as I've explained. Dark Confidant is a big problem as well, just because it doesn't draw cards, but it does, and yeah, that makes life kind of hard for us. And I suppose we could have potentially got back into this game if our opponent hadn't blown up our lands, because Commit followed by Memory would have been pretty tasty, but unfortunately not enough. And I suppose they could have also just activated 2 Shambling Vents and attacked us for lethal, given they had enough lands to do that. So yeah, not quite good enough, unfortunately. But a close game and a pretty interesting one, I thought.